Hi everyone, you're listening to the Tea with Tanya podcast, and I'm your host, Tanya Ambrose. I'm a public health professional by day and your average tea-loving millennial and content creator by night. My goal for this podcast is to share public health stories, self-love and wellness tips, to educate and empower, and to promote positive living. This podcast is here to serve you. Join me in the tea tasting room to see what I have brewing for you. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Tea with Tanya podcast, and I'm joined by a very special guest. I know I say this all the time, but I've been trying to get this guest on since season 1. But our schedule have always been hectic, and here we are in season 2, finally getting to sit down to talk to her. She's a fellow Antigua and a fellow Caribbean sister, or island sister, I like to say. And today we're here to talk about our nutrition and our health as millennials and young people, because we all know I personally on this wellness, holistic health journey. And of course, I'm going to take you guys along. And of course, we're going to learn as much as we can as it relates to our health and nutrition and everything, because that's going to be it is important, in our daily survival, and especially in this time that we're living in right now. We have to make sure that we are doing our part. So I'm going to introduce my guest. Her name is Miss Charity, and I'm going to let her tell us all about herself, and we'll get into today's episode. So tell us about yourself, Charity.
Hello, Tanya. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. So my name is Charity Dublin. I am a newly minted public health nutritionist, but I have been a nutritionist for the last 5 years or so. And I really do have a passion for nutrition, a passion for public health, a passion for helping people. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be on discussing one of my passions with you, Tanya.
Yes. We as public health professionals, we have been on the front lines for a long time, but, because of this pandemic now, public health as a profession has really been at the forefront. So what really got you interested in this profession? Like one day, growing up in the Caribbean, let's be honest, you're either going to be a teacher, lawyer, doctor, things like that when we are deciding our career path. So what really got you interested in your field, or how did your upbringing influence your choice?
It's actually a really funny story because I fell into it accidentally.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I went to university to study psychology. And
wow.
I did not like it. My first semester, I did not like it. I went to the, you have these offices of like career development guidance.
Yeah.
I went to that office and said, you have to help me. I don't know what I'm doing. I hate this course. You have to find something else for me to do. I cannot be a psychology major for the next 4 years. So we did that profession test. And I went around, so I had nutritionists, I had a bunch of other ones, and I went around to all of the different faculties on campus, and I was like, so, tell me, what do you do here? And what does your major involve? That type of stuff. And when I landed at the Faculty of Nutrition, I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. And the person who met me, she was very dynamic. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. This sounds like something we can do. And I've always had a passion for food. I've always had a passion for nutrition. Funny story, when I was in high school, in 4th and 5th forms, I was the only student in my nutrition class for that time period. So it was just
the only student of the entire school. And guys, for my North American listeners, when she says 4th and 5th form, we're talking about, I think it's 10th and 11th grade for you guys here. So you were the only student in that time frame
for 2 years.
For that class. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So you can imagine, I had to pay attention.
You have no choice.
No one to talk to. And I definitely credit that teacher, because she could have just said, I'm not teaching one student, going to the other time frame with the other student. She didn't. So I definitely credit her. Her name was Miss Gregory. I think she's married.
Oh, Miss Pilgrim. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's one of my best friend's sister. Yes.
I definitely credit her with giving me that interest in nutrition. I didn't have a choice. I had to pay attention.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I can't believe the only student, and I think that's a testament to again, sometimes we think that, some careers are for us, or, but at least you had an option to change and you're now able to be in your passion. Because I think many of us sometimes are like, what, let me go become an accountant, knowing good and well that, it's not really our passion, but it's just something to do. And instead of trying to make that switch earlier on, we finish and then we're like, unhappy. So that's really a good thing that you were able to recognize that, what, psychology is not for me. And that's good, because let me tell you, me, like, I love public health. It's such a broad field. You can do so many different things. My passion is women's and maternal health, but just to see that you were the only student and that did not even deter you from, dropping the class or just trying some other class. You stayed right there as the only student. So who are you going to cheat off of? I'm just joking. Who are you going to ask? Oh, hey, can I see your home? How can I help? So that's really a testament to you and to you, as you say, Miss Program, your nutrition teacher. So I do want to talk about, though, for me, because I'll talk about me first before we talk about something else. I am battling high cholesterol. I don't know. I'm 31 years old, guys, and I'm here battling, when I say high, very high cholesterol. I forgot the numbers. I shouldn't have at the top of my head, but I forgot. But early in the year, we're in 2021. So late in 2020, I went to the doctor. So I went on my annual checkup, and he was like, you're on the borderline for high cholesterol. Now, guys, I'm someone who eats a lot of eggs. I think that's what contributes to this high cholesterol that I'm battling right now, because I don't really eat like greasy or fried food. Because, again, I'll let you talk about that. But, when I went to the doctor this year, and I'm no longer on the borderline. I have very extremely high cholesterol. I'm being not forced, but he told me to ensure that I'm eating like, a low cholesterol diet and, watching what I'm eating. I'm going to be honest, guys. I haven't been as consistent. I've been trying. I've come a long way, but some days, we do have bad days. So for you as a nutritionist now, for me, I thought that cholesterol was something that we would see in the older generation, or, geriatric patient, these different things. So speak to us about, I guess, what cholesterol is or what can cause it, if you're able to do that. And also how we as young millennials or young people can help develop a habit or lifestyle that's going to like curb that. Because again, in my mind, before I learned what I know now is that I thought cholesterol only impacted or attacked the older population. So speak a little bit about that for me, please.
I'm really happy that you mentioned the fact that we think that certain diseases only affect the older population.
Yes.
Because what we're seeing now is younger and younger people. We're talking about early 20s, late teens having elevated cholesterol, having diabetes, being on antihypertensive medications. So it is something that we really have to focus on, because it's not something that's going to affect us in 20 years. It could be something that's affecting us now. And if you're not someone who is going to your doctor regularly, you would never know until much later when you start to become symptomatic. So cholesterol is a type of blood lipid. And it is something that can be managed with diet for some people. Some people need medication, and there are persons with who you would find them exercising, eating right. But some persons just have that family history of elevated cholesterol and they need to be on medication. But there are a lot of people who can manage it with diet and with exercise. So when we're looking at exercise, we want to be aiming for a minimum of 150 minutes per week. And we don't necessarily want to just lump that exercise, that movement, into 1 or 2 days per week. We want to most the days of the week. So around 30 minutes, 5 days a week is perfectly fine. And then when we're talking about the diet, this is where it gets interesting. So with the diet, you mentioned eggs. So eggs are definitely high in cholesterol, yes. But then we also want to look at it very holistically. So we want to look at whether or not we're eating a lot of animal source foods, because that's where you're going to be finding a lot of the cholesterol. So yogurt, cheese, full cream, milk, full fat milk, seafood as well. For some people can trigger the elevated cholesterol. So if you're doing things like chicken, you want to make sure that you remove all of the skin and fat before you prepare it. And you want to make sure that you're choosing meats and chicken that aren't very high in fat, so a leaner piece. So for a lot of people, that means that chicken wings are out, because it's very difficult for me to skip the chicken
wings. I just had wings yesterday.
And then another thing that we want to do is we want to be mindful about our food preparation methods. So not using a lot of fat. And then when it comes down to the fats that we use, we want to use more olive oil, avocado, pear, nuts and seeds, oily / fatty fish. These are very good sources of heart healthy fats that can help us manage our cholesterol.
That's interesting. I'm happy you're actually saying all that. Keep going. I'm intrigued.
Well, we want to focus on what we're reducing in terms of the saturated and trans fats and in terms of animal source foods. Just putting a pin there on the animal source foods, that's where we definitely want to transition more towards a plant-based diet. It doesn't mean that you'll become a vegan or a vegetarian. It just means that you're incorporating more plants into your diet, some more tofu, more dried peas and beans, that type of stuff.
Sorry to cut you off. I want to, because, I'm thinking, okay, I got to, I've been told go on a low cholesterol diet. I'm not there in my growth as far as cutting out any type of meat. I have cut out some, I'll be honest with that. But I want you to say that part again to those listening. You don't have to necessarily go fully vegan, but you can incorporate. Go ahead, say it again.
Yeah, so you don't have to become a vegan. You don't have to become a fully vegetarian. You can just start with, and it's something that I practice and I preach. It's gentle nutrition. It is ensuring that you're making these small steps regularly because they definitely add up. So if it means trading some of your scrambled eggs for scrambled tofu a few days a week, that's something that you can do, but you don't need to cut out eggs completely. If you're not absolutely a huge fan of milk, and that's something where you can switch to a plant-based alternative like oat milk, almond milk, soy milk, you can do that. And it doesn't mean that you have to take out everything that's coming from an animal source. You can meet yourself where you are. You can decide what it is that you're happy with doing, what it is that you can do and still enjoy the foods that you're eating. I think that is so important. So we talked a bit about reducing animal source foods. What we also want to do, because we don't want to focus only on the taking out, we want to focus on the adding in. So we want to add in foods that are high in fiber. So here we're talking about your fruits and your veggies and your whole grains, because what these foods do is the fiber in them will bind to cholesterol and it will help your body to excrete it. So it's kind of a...
trying to find a balance.
Yes, exactly.
That's where I lack. So I'm happy I'm speaking to you. I should have reached out to you earlier. But, I thought about that. I do eat my fruits. But again, for me, I think my diet honestly lacks a little bit of fiber. So definitely, I'm thankful that you did share that. Now I want to go on to, I know we spoke about cholesterol. And in the Caribbean, again, we are known, or many families, to have, either diabetes or hypertension.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that was, it runs in my family. But to me, I think that that's something, again, like you said earlier, we can, in a sense, I don't want to say cure, but we can, with the lifestyle change, we can lower or limit or even eliminate hypertension. So why do you think that hypertension and diabetes is so high as it relates to, in Antigua, in the Caribbean? And what can those listening, those who may be on the borderline or who just don't know? Because again, we think that these things affect like our parents or grandparents, when in fact, as you say, the younger generation, we are struggling with either hypotension, which is low blood sugar, or hypertension. So speak a little bit about that to us from a, nutritional standpoint.
So honestly, I think our very high rates are coming from the fact that we have high rates when it comes to the risk factors for non-communicable diseases, because high cholesterol, diabetes, hypertension, these are all non-communicable diseases, or what we call NCDs. And then
for those who don't know what non-communicable diseases are, can you just explain that a little bit? Because not everybody knows.
So these are basically diseases that you cannot, they're not communicable, so you cannot share them, you cannot catch them. Many of them are lifestyle based, many of them are based on family history, many of them are based on the environment that you live in. So in the Caribbean region, we have, lots of us have risk factors for these conditions. Whether it is the fact that we're sedentary, so we're sitting a lot, whether it's the fact that we don't exercise, because there's a difference between being sedentary and not exercising. So you can exercise a lot and still be sedentary, still be sitting down all the time. So we definitely want to encourage persons to get up, get moving, and still have that planned physical activity in their day. Also, we have a very, very huge family histories when it comes to diabetes, cholesterol. As you said, everybody's grandma, uncle, daddy, auntie has high blood pressure, high blood sugar, both. Some people say just have a little touch of sugar.
Yeah.
And then a huge, huge part of it is also the fact that in the Caribbean region, lots of persons are overweight and obese. So not saying that being overweight and obese causes these NCDs, but it's a risk factor for them, for these non-communicable diseases. So what we really want to do is we want to look at it holistically, and we want to touch on all of the different risk factors, because there are lots of them that we cannot change. We can't change our family history. We can't change our race, because of being of Afro-Caribbean descent, being of African-American descent puts us at increased risk for these NCDs. We can't change that. But we can change our activity levels. We can change what we eat. We can change how we manage our stress and that type of stuff.
Also, now you say stress, I want to say, as a young person, because, I feel like we are living in a state of stress. As, young people trying to elevate in our careers, or trying to finish school, or trying to be, be somebody in society. So how can we recognize, if you can answer this, how can we recognize that we're not as healthy as before? Because I'll speak to me. Again, growing up in the Caribbean, we have fruits and vegetables in our backyard, or we know it's being planted by somebody, because, in Antigua, when everybody, oh, my cousin, they have a farm, these different things. You know that your food is being naturally grown, to put it that way. And then, when you migrate, and I learned this in school in one of my public health classes, that we, those who are coming from Africa, India, in the Caribbean, like, we have a different type of lifestyle where we're coming from. Then we'll come to, let's say, the United States, where everything is different, everything is faster, everything is readily available. So sometimes that may have an effect on how, it can help deteriorate our health faster. So how can we know, as young people coming up here, who we think, oh, I'm young, I'm 21, 25, I'm 30, I'm just going to be healthy all around. How can we know we're not as healthy as before? Or encourage those listening to ensure that we're going to see our primary care provider. Because again, we think because we're 20, 21, whatever age we are, that, certain things don't affect us. Well, as we see now, that's not the case. So how do we know that we're not as healthy as before? And then how often, or, let's encourage us to go see how that's it.
So the first thing, how do we know that we're not as healthy as before? The first thing is you definitely want to be in tune with your body, in tune with yourself. And when it comes to many of the conditions that are affected by nutrition, some of them you don't see the signs and the symptoms until damage has been done. So whether it is diabetes, high blood pressure, kidney disease, they do have some signs and symptoms, especially for diabetes. But when we're looking at like high cholesterol, when we're looking at hypertension, when we're looking at kidney disease, you often don't see the signs and the symptoms until damage has been done. So first of all, you want to be in tune with your body. Know if something is changing. So for diabetes, you may notice you're having frequent urination. You're thirsty all the time. You feel hungry all the time. You have dizziness. You have fatigue. You're tired all the time and you don't know why. These are the little changes that you want to kind of look at and say, okay, there's something going on here. Let me go to my doctor and get tested. Don't just brush it off and say, it might get better. I'll watch it for a little bit longer, because that is how we find ourselves in trouble sometimes. And the other thing that I would definitely advise persons to do, younger persons especially, we're not invincible. Go and see your doctor annually. Go and have blood tests done annually, because those blood tests are what will tell your healthcare professionals, your healthcare providers, what is going on. And then we have things like diabetes, where if you go and you have those bloods done and they notice that your sugars are at the higher end of normal, you're pre-diabetic, we can have some lifestyle and diet interventions there that can prevent you from becoming a diabetic. So we say it all the time in the Caribbean, prevention is better than cure. So you definitely find out what's going on so that you can address what is going on. Because in the Caribbean, old people have a saying, like, if in a bad me, so in a trouble me, trouble out, right? So no, that's not how it works. It's going to trouble you someday.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. But for me, And I want to talk about diets a little bit. Like, we have the fad diets. We see people trying to lose weight. Oh, get on this, do that. But there are other people too that also stress eat. So what are some tips that one can do to not stress eat? And then what are your thoughts or opinion or suggestions when it comes to fad diets? Because that's becoming more and more popular. And, we've seen it's not as healthy. So what are some tips when it comes to stress eating? And what are your thoughts as it relates to fad diets and, people who are considering doing one of that?
So the first thing is, for some people, stress eating is 100% normal. It is something that happens to many people. So you don't want to beat yourself up about it. You don't want to restrict your eating to make up for the fact that you're going to stress eat later on. What you may want to do, and the best thing for you to do, is figure out what is causing your stress and address the cause. Address the cause of your stress, whether that means removing yourself from a certain situation, whether that means finding healthier ways to manage your stress, such as exercise, deep breathing, meditation, yoga, speaking to a mental health professional. Find some way, two things: locate the source of your stress and find better ways to manage your stress so you're not relying on the stress eating to cope. And then also knowing that stress eating is normal. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just figure out how you can address it. And definitely don't restrict your eating in an attempt to make up for everything that you think you would have consumed before. And then you had another question. What was it?
Like about fat diets. So for those who are considering, to, I guess, find the easier, quicker way out, what effect does that have on our health, mentally and, of course, physically?
The first thing I want to say is that diets don't work. They don't work. There is not a single fad diet out there that is going to work in the long term. And I've seen it with patients, because a lot of my patients come to me for weight management. So they would have been doing all kind of diets. I'm not even going to name them because I don't want to give them the day. But they would have tried all of these diets. And the thing is, with these fad diets, you may lose weight, but the weight doesn't stay off most of the time. And then also, we also want to remember that weight management is not the only aspect of healthy eating. So weight loss is not the only aspect of being healthy, because you can lose weight and you can do it in an unhealthy manner that compromises your overall nutrition and your overall health. So we want to be gentle with ourselves. And what we want to do is we want to ensure that we're eating a very balanced and healthy diet. So not just a healthy diet, because you can eat a diet full of lots of healthy foods, but it's not healthy because the balance is lacking. So you want to ensure that you have a balance and that you're eating a variety of foods and that you're enjoying the foods that you eat. And that what we want is we want a healthy lifestyle. So a lot of persons who do fad diets, what they're looking for is weight loss. And the thing is, for many persons, they can achieve weight loss with a healthy overall lifestyle when the focus is not on weight loss. So we're looking at the different unhealthy habits that we may have in our life, and we're trying to address them one by one. And what you find there is that eventually you may lose some weight. And when you lose that weight, it is weight loss that you're able to sustain because you've integrated these practices into your lifestyle, into your day-to-day.
So tell us about, if you, to some extent, what exactly is a balanced diet? I mean, I may know, but for those of us who don't know, because some of us may think, let me go on a salad diet. Let me just only have salad and salmon and that's it. But what exactly should we have on our plate that will be classified as a balanced diet? For those of you who are trying to do better in life, what is a balanced diet?
So a balanced diet is where you're eating a variety of foods from all of the food groups. So I'm going to be taking it from a Caribbean standpoint because that is where I work and practice and live. In the Caribbean, most countries have what we call food-based dietary guidelines. And these are guidelines that are developed to meet the needs of specific countries. Most food-based dietary guidelines have fixed food groups. In Antigua and Barbuda, our food-based dietary guidelines, we have 7 groups there. So we have fruits, we have staple food starches, which most people would call your carbs. So here you have your breadfruit, your provision, your rice, your crackers, your fungi. And then we have your dried peas and beans and your legumes and nuts. You have your foods from animals, you have your vegetables, you have your fats. And then in Antigua and Barbuda, there is a section of our food-based dietary guidelines that has in that sugars and sweeteners section. So it has in your, whether it's your brown sugar or your white sugar, whether it's your honey, your molasses, your maple syrup, whether it is some juice, whether it is some cakes, cookies, candies. There's a very small sliver of our guideline that has that in. Have you ever seen our guidelines? It's in the shape of a pineapple.
Mm.
So it looks like a pineapple.
I have not. Wow.
It's in the
That's
shape.
interesting.
So it's so it would be more of a pie. It's like an oval pie chart. So a very small sliver of that is sugars and sweeteners, because we do acknowledge that some persons want a bit of cakes, cookies, candies, and that is fine. You can incorporate that as a part of a healthy, balanced diet. Perfectly fine. It's about how much you're having, how often you're having it. So that's what a balanced diet would look like, eating a variety of foods from all of the food groups. But you know that there's some groups they're going to have way less of, like the sugars group and beef fat. And then there are groups that you want to have a bit more of. So like your vegetables and your fruits, your legumes and nuts. And also we definitely want to ensure that we're having our staples and our starches, our carbohydrates, because they give us the energy that we need. I know there are lots of diets going on right now, lots of fad diets where we're completely removing carbohydrates. And once again, it's not healthy or sustainable. Lots of persons are going on the ketogenic diet. And the evidence that we have for the keto diet is more so for treating children with epilepsy. It's had high rates of success there. But then, especially in the Caribbean, it may not be sustainable because you're consuming high amounts of saturated fats. Because, you know, things like salmon and depending on the time of the year, avocado, which you're getting those healthy fats from, are very expensive in the Caribbean. So when persons are going on the keto diet, one, it's not sustainable because they want those carbs. So they transition back into a very high carb diet. Or two, it's not sustainable in terms of finances and being able to budget for it. Because you never want your diet to be the reason that you're going broke and that you can't sustain other aspects of your life.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned finances because I was coming to that. You know, from what I've seen here, we have like food deserts, and that's where in underpopulated, underprivileged communities, you know, they'll have all the foods that not as healthy for you, but is what someone can afford. So for those of us who are in a situation where, like you said, with the keto diet, you know, for those with epilepsy, it's better for them, but then there's certain times of the year where certain things are available, but at the same time, it's expensive. Let's be honest, it is expensive in the Caribbean. You know, it can be pricey here in the US where I am based right now as well. So for those of us who are trying, who really want to change our lifestyle, of course we can be more active, but for those of us who know we have to change our diet, but we are not in a position financially to, I guess, have a complete or a balanced diet. Like, what are some alternatives we can do? Of course, again, everything is in moderation, but what can people do who they want to? They are motivated to, or they know they need to, but again, they have to live within their means. They got to think about, I got to pay rent. You know, there's so many factors, again, and that contributes to stress as well in our lives. But what can people do who are not as financially secure, but they know they need to? Like, what are some alternatives we can do? Like, can we just have, you know, some lettuce here, but then have something else to, you know, like, what can we do?
So the first thing that you want to do is you never want to feel bad about making the most or doing the best with what is available to you. That's the first thing. Like, don't feel guilty about eating a certain way because this is what you can afford. But coming right off of that, you want to ensure that you are putting your money in the most nutritious and most nutrient-dense foods properly. The most nutritious and nutrient-dense foods as possible. And you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that is sustainable. So, for example, you don't want to spend your money, and we're talking about it from a Caribbean perspective again. You don't want to spend your money buying, let's say, like peaches, because those are expensive here, and strawberries and blueberries, and you're only eating that for 2 days out of the week because somebody told you that those were high in antioxidants, and that's what you needed to be healthy. When you could be buying some apples, you could get some mangoes, you could get some sugar apples, some soursop, you could get some papa from somebody in your village, or you could get it for cheap on the side of the road. You want to purchase foods that will give you the most bang for your buck. And in the Caribbean, that means eating locally. It means eating foods that are in season. It also means being more mindful about where you're spending your money. So, for example, you may not want to eat out as often because eating out comes with a higher price tag. You may want to sit down on a Sunday and think about what you want to eat for the rest of the week and then do some meal prep. It doesn't have to be a full-blown meal prep where you're cooking every single thing that you'll be eating the entire week. But, you can just do some basics. You can chop some veggies. You can bake some chicken. And then what you also want to do is know that you can, yes, fresh veggies are what we want, but you can also do canned vegetables. You can also do frozen vegetables. That's perfectly fine. If chicken breast is too expensive for you, you don't have to do the chicken breast. You can do the chicken thigh, and you can remove all of the visible fat, and you can remove all of the skin before you cook it. If quinoa is expensive, you can use rice, but you want to do it Caribbean style, so you want to add your peas and your beans, you want to add your spinach or your okra or your pumpkin to your rice. Those are the little tweaks that we want to do. So never ever think that you need to buy some expensive item in order to eat healthy. Look at what you're already eating and try to figure out how you can add some more nutrients into that.
Well, Miss Charity, I am happy I have you on here because I've learned a lot. I thought I knew it all, but I have learned. So as we're about to wrap up, tell the people, one, where they can find you, for those who are in Antigua, if you're accepting clients, whatever it is, just tell us where we can find you on, all that stuff. So we can, send some clients your way, but also encourage people to really and truly take their nutrition seriously. Because again, that's, we talk about we want to be wealthy, but if we're not healthy, then how can we get to the state of being wealthy? So let us know where we can find you, and especially, on social media, but for those in Antigua, where can they find you?
So for those of you in Antigua and Barbuda, if you do want the services of a nutritionist, it is available free at cost at almost every government public health clinic or health center. If there's not a nutritionist attached to your clinic, you can still go into your clinic and they will set up an appointment for you with someone who is relatively close by. So it's absolutely free. You can find me depending on where you're living, or there are other nutritionists who are just as knowledgeable and just as ready, willing, and able to help you. On social media, you can find me on Instagram at Your Caribbean Nutritionist, and we can connect and talk there.
She's also a bookstagrammer, but she's not saying that part. But she does read a lot of books. She's one of the reasons why I have a lot of books on my bookshelf that are unopened for right now. I'm trying to find the time, but she's amazing, and I want to thank you so much and of course I put the links down in the description box so you guys can follow her, because she does share important and helpful information. So thank you so much for joining us, Charity.
Thank you.
Probably gonna have you back. I'm not gonna lie, because I feel like we can go on and on, but time's of the essence. So definitely, but thank you so much. And I am proud of you, because let me tell you, you know your stuff, and like I said, I just know somebody's going to be blessed by this episode. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Tanya.